I was there to talk to the other guy,
Mhm.
and he kept hassling me to come up with a catchphrase.
It's a
Right?
catchphrase.
Yeah, he just kept saying like you gotta come up with something to say that you can like say anytime there's like a pause.
Hmm.
I think he was being goofy, but
So, did you eventually like just say like "hurgledy gurgledy"?
that's my kind of weird. That's what I said.
That's my kind of weird.
Yep.
Ah, I, I think you can do better. I know you're on
Oh,
the spot,
I
but
absolutely can do better. When I came up with that was literally like, okay, Nick, we're starting in 10 minutes. By the way, come up with a catchphrase.
that's my kind of weird.
Hmm.
It reminds me of that skit that they used to have on Whose Line Is It Anyway, where two of them can only say like two lines, and only one of them can speak freely. And then you change the meaning by changing the inflection. Like, that's my kind of weird. That's
Oh
my
yeah.
kind of weird. That's my kind of weird.
Yeah. Or that exercise where actors have conversations using the alphabet.
Yeah, that's a hard exercise.
Just where you literally only say the letter. You don't even like start words.
Oh. Okay, never mind.
It's
I
just sort
understand.
of like A, B, C, D, E.
Right,
You know, you
right.
change the inflection to imply conversation. I don't know. It's interesting. Mm.
Interesting. That could be the first episode. That could be how we open.
Does that sound like something we could talk about any more than we already have?
I don't know. There's only one way to find out. Quick, say something about it.
I guess it says something about the way that we tend to downplay the role of inflection and whatnot in our words. We talk about what people said, and we joke about how they said it. But in point of fact,
Right.
you can actually hold these conversations that have meaning to us. We can understand what is happening without saying any
Yes.
words.
Absolutely. It reflects the idea in general that the words and the letters themselves are only really the outer aspect. They're only the vehicle conveying the meaning of what we say. But
Yeah.
they're only the vehicle. The meaning is separate.
It reminds me of how much we lose when we
Ah,
switch to text writing. It's it's not something I was really fully cognizant of until I sat down and decided I'm a writer, I'm going to write things. And you start to realize you really are truly limited in what you can express through words. You can spend 10,000 words describing a painting, but it will be boring and no one will give a shit. But you could draw that exact painting and it will have a completely different effect. It's like there really is these huge limitations on words that I don't think that we fully appreciate most of the time.
absolutely true. On the one hand, the sort of text-based communication, which so many people who grew up with the internet got used to before voice and video conversations on the internet were really feasible. It was I wonder if that stunted the communication skills, or on the other hand, it actually improved them. I heard recently that there was a study that people that text regularly, that text more than call or something, tend to actually have better hold on English grammar, which is quite revolutionary, since you would think that the text culture and the text form of communication is such a brief, limited form. But I think, in a sense, maybe there might be findings that show the limitations on the form of expression and force you to really think about how to use it and to bring out your creativity that way. There's people that in the Twitter generation that are forced to express something in 140 letters, or in a sense have a gift, that brevity. In fact, that brevity much more represents the type of communication that writers historically were limited to before you had the huge mass printing abilities and things like that, where you could print a lot of words very quickly. You would only be able to pass on things in much shorter form. And being forced to write in a shorter form, I think, really
Yeah,
could help
I mean,
communication.
it is funny. We do tend to get like a lot of people who deride the Twitter model and everything. Fucking Shakespeare said brevity is the soul of wit. These same people are the ones who think Shakespeare is like the fucking only piece of worthwhile literature that's ever been written.
Right. Right, exactly. 100%. I mean, there's definitely different forms of brevity. I mean, there's you have to know how to use it. I don't think it's so simple. When Mark Twain famously said, I wanted to write you a short letter, but I wrote you a long one." That's not the same kind of short as somebody that doesn't know what to say or doesn't know how to express themselves. On the contrary, that's the short of somebody that knows how to express themselves very well. And the best way to express themselves is in a shorter form.
No, absolutely. We're agreeing way too much.
We're agreeing way too much.
Yeah, we agree
I
too
thought
much on
that,
this issue.
we're expressing ourselves in a okay. Fair enough. I don't know if that's really going to be an issue. Did you think it was uninteresting at any point?
No, not.
I knew that.
So, what do you think about hitting for our first attempt, aiming at a halfway point between our two ideas, where you were thinking a 2-minute intro, 2-minute outro, and then like 3 5-minute segments, and I was thinking 30 minutes single topic. We could hit a middle road where we do intro, outro, and like maybe just 2 segments. Like we start with 2 subjects. We're like, today we're going to talk about Final Fantasy IV and baseball. Talk about Final Fantasy
And
IV for
everything in
15
between.
minutes. Hopefully not everything in between, because there are too many things in
Literally
between
everything.
those.
Literally everything in between. Alphabetically, physically, emotionally, economically, spiritually,
Here's a
everything in
more
between.
interesting question. Can you think of anything, literally anything, that is not Final Fantasy IV or baseball that is not in between Final Fantasy IV and baseball?
Oh, that is an interesting question. That requires study. That's the subject of study in several new academic disciplines. Um,
It would be really funny for this conversation that we are recording right now to actually be the first episode of the podcast.
that would be weird.
Yeah. I mean, that's my kind of weird.
Why am I laughing? Oh, hurgledy burgledy. Oh man,
Oh, good.
that's just terrible.
It was pretty bad. Okay. So,
Ahem.
what do you imagine an intro and an outro looking like?
Oh, I don't know. I think an intro could just be, as long as it's kept brief, there's no reason why it can't be just conversational. I think a lot of radio shows have that, and I always think it's a good thing. Just sort of a rah, we're doing a podcast now, come and listen, this is exciting, we're enthusiastic, this is what we're going to talk about, let's go.
Okay. So basically what I did when I was joking earlier, when I was
Mhm.
like, hey, welcome to the DM and the Dotafine. I'm LS and this is Kill Off with an H. Today we're
Yes,
talking
exactly.
about how big our dicks are.
Right. It would even be good to have, we could even do a very short scripted bit for introductions. A little back and forth, maybe even a joke could be good. Maybe.
No,
I
I
don't know.
can see that.
Just a thought.
It's a good thought. My only concern is that there would be too much of an obvious difference in tone. I mean, neither one of
Right.
us are actors.
Right. That's true.
So I feel like if we script something, there's this danger that we'll have like 2 minutes of, so here is the thing that I wrote down and that we edited several times that for me to say. And then we're done with that and we go, okay, so what's up?
Right. How are you this afternoon? You
We
are
should,
doing fine.
uh,
See, thought, run.
well, hopefully, we could write something a little more significant than that. I mean, we are both ostensibly writers.
Ostensibly, theoretically.
Mm.
It's a good thing we have your experience to go on because you're probably a much more demanding listener than I am.
I can be a very harsh critic. It's actually funny because 2 3 years ago, I realized that nothing good comes of that, and decided that I was done being a critic.
Mhm.
It is alluring. It's just so fucking fun to write and easy, and people care about it way, and you get like all this added publicity.
Right. Right.
There are so many benefits that make reviewing things easy, but ultimately, like think about it. How many good things that you like have been made by people who are known for reviewing things?
Right. Exactly.
And
Right.
when they do try, because they often try, usually it's garbage.
Right. It depends. It depends what it is. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think Yahtzee is a great example of someone who's consistently hilarious and does only reviews, or at least got big that way.
That is a good point. And he has made good things.
Right.
I enjoyed the first of his books. I haven't read the second. I haven't finished reading the second. And I enjoyed The Art of Theft. I thought that was a very good video game.
I don't know what that is. I didn't know that he made a video game.
But yeah, he basically made a 2D stealth game where you sneak into buildings and steal shit.
Oh, interesting.
And it was good. So
Sure.
here's the choice.
Yeah.
So we're having these discussions, most likely with some kinds of disagreement, maybe not. Do we resolve them? Do we reach any kind of conclusion, or do we cut them off on a strict time limit and just let the discussion stand without a resolution?
I think it's much better without a resolution because for so many reasons. I mean, I could go into it, but I think it's much more authentic maybe to let it stand without a resolution. It's also, I don't know if that's the type of thing we want to be going for, that our show is looking to actually solve arguments, give answers, that type of thing. I don't know.
No, I agree. I presented it that way because I feel like that's the natural conclusion. Of course,
Right,
something ends with a conclusion,
right,
but I think you summed it
right,
up pretty well. That it's more interesting to just be like, here's a snapshot of a conversation between two people.
right.
You know,
And, it doesn't need to, it doesn't have to be necessarily because of strict time limit either. It's just that in the first place, we have no interest in actually resolving that itself. If we could put that in a podcast, we could just influence some people to be able to argue with someone and not have to come to a conclusion and be able to still be friendly with someone even though they disagree about things. I think that itself is doing a lot of good in the world. I would see that as a win for our podcast if we could
no,
influence one more person to think that way.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, ultimately, we're never going to reach resolution on a lot of issues. So,
Clearly.
yeah. By the way, for your own edification with regards to our ability to talk about things, that first segment of our conversation is over 30 minutes long.
Right.
Like
Before the
from when I
disconnect?
started recording to when the
Right.
voice chat cut out, it's 30 minutes.
We could definitely talk about things. The question is it good? I think a lot depends on that. I think a lot depends on finding the topics that will bring out the best in our conversations. I think a lot depends on that.
True, but I think more than finding good topics, consistency is the key. Consistency has become my mantra in that, like, it doesn't matter if you suck. What matters is that you do. If we
Right.
put out an episode that is, then we have a boring episode. But if we put out an episode every week, then a boring episode doesn't fucking matter because there's,
Right.
another one in 7 days.
Right. Right. Yeah, I hear that.
You hear a lot of things. You have very good hearing.
Uh,
I mean, you
and
like
my
the terrible
jokes
jokes.
my jokes are going to be the bad jokes. Yeah, exactly.
That is a joke that I would not have made if it was not you I was talking to.
That's gonna have to be on the soundboard. That could be the sound.
Oh man, Star Wars books, totes my goats. You know
Star
what?
Wars books?
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Which reminds me, actually, did I
Totes my goats. It is.
did I ever send you that essay I wrote about Wraith Squadron?
No, I don't think so.
It's funny, but I talk about you in it constantly.
Oh well, yes. So that is funny.
Yeah, I basically I wrote this this big essay where I was like, my friend Tzvi and I have been disagreeing for years about whether the Mike Stackpole or the Aaron Alston run in the X-Wing books were better. I just reread Wraith Squadron, and Tzvi, you were right. I was wrong.
Of course I was right.
Yeah.
I don't even understand what your point was in the first place. We could have a whole episode just trying to figure out what your point was in the first place.
Yeah, like, I don't necessarily blame Mike Stackpole for it, but I found myself in kind of the unique situation recently of reading Rogue Squadron book 1 of the series, and then the next book I read was Wraith Squadron book 5 in the series. I skipped all the books in between.
Uh-huh.
So I had this opportunity to really have a direct mental comparison between the beginnings of the two series within the greater series. And yeah, like, Alston's is better on every level,
Right.
unequivocally.
Austin's really good.
I wouldn't necessarily say he's the better writer because I feel like there was some heavy-handed management of Stackpole's writing that made it worse.
Okay. Fair enough.
Like, I don't know that for a fact, but that's just the feeling that I get as I read it. But yeah, I mean, Alston is funnier. His characters come alive more.
His characters in that book are very, very good.
It is
Really,
actually a remarkable work of character.
really just great. The plotting is good as well. There's great character growth and plot twists and all sorts of interesting things.
Yeah, I only reread I only read the first Rogue book, but the Rogue books, they kind of have a very linear sort of progression in a way. Uh, they move from point A to point B to point C, whereas the Wraith books, the first book, their foe is this nobody
Right,
in the grand scheme of things. It's not until the
right,
second
right,
book that they move on to that larger. Um,
right, right.
and there's also like this interesting variance in their tactics.
Yes, he had
In
all
book
these
one
great
and two.
ideas, all these plot points that like you never see before. It's so creative.
It is, no, absolutely. But I was more referring to the fact that their overall tactics throughout the course of a book. Because in the first two full books, they're a covert unit. They're working on covert operations. And then
Right,
they completely switch gears in the third, and they're just a straight up X-Wing unit.
right,
And I thought that
right.
that was a really bold and interesting transition.
Yes, and even the characters find it strange, and they're getting recruits of like top notch people that they never would have got at first because they were supposed to be like a whole squadron full of misfits.
Also, the fact that the main character is constantly shifting.
Yes,
I
that's
mean,
true.
the first Wraith Squadron book is told almost entirely from the point of view of Keltainer and maybe 40% Wedge Antilles.
Right,
Um,
right. And
and
then it
then,
sort of switches to being about face and also more of Wedge, though.
yeah, and Kel
Yeah,
disappears.
it's really,
He
yeah.
completely goes away.
But you know what? And the most amazing thing about it is that his going away is totally consistent with his character transition. In other words, he as he becomes more comfortable with letting go of the reins of leadership and people depending on him, and he realizes that it's not really his place, he sort of just fades into the background. He like has a happy life. His conflict is resolved at the end of the first book almost. So
I think there was like a single POV chapter, or a single POV segment of his in the whole rest of the series.
right. There's no character on Wraith Squadron that's not interesting in their own individual way. There's Keltainer, who has this totally messed up history that he's trying to live down. You have Face, who is physically deformed and is a defector from the Empire. You have man, it's been a few years. I'm forgetting some of these names. You have the Doctor, who's also physically deformed and he's clearly a nihilist sort of joker. He doesn't really live for anything. You have Kel's girlfriend, who isn't good enough to be a Jedi. You have Runt and Piggy, who are both from two very different alien races than we're used to dealing with, even in the Star Wars universe. I think Runt's race was probably invented for his character, and Piggy is his race is pre-existent, but he's completely unique. I mean, it's just like character after character, solid work.
And I hate to shit on Mike Stackpole, but can you name even half that number of characters from
Right.
Mike Stackpole's X-Wing books?
Right. I really don't think I could. In fact, the only characters from the X-Wing books that I'm familiar with because of other books like I Jedi or whatever all the other books from that part in the history. The New Jedi Order books, different things like that.
So Mike Stackpole is he's actually a super great guy. He has a lot of resources that he's put out there for writers. And at one point he talked about how to make lovable heroes and detestable villains, right? And his core principle, which he wasn't saying is something you should always do. He was just saying like this is how you surefire make a character that people will love or a villain that people will hate, is about loyalty. A character who is absolutely infallibly loyal will be a beloved protagonist. Whereas a character who is infallibly treacherous, like constantly treacherous without an ounce of loyalty in them, will be hated.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. That clearly isn't universally true, I would think, but it's definitely a good point.
It is.
You know what?
It's
Actually,
a
it
really
might be
good guiding
universally.
principle.
It might
But
actually be universally true now that I think about it. The counterexample I was thinking of is not actually a true counterexample. He actually is infallibly loyal. He's treacherous to some, but he's loyal to the people that are his people, so it doesn't work.
I think the interesting thing about this, about that point within the context of the X-Wing books, is to look at the protagonists of the pilot book of each of the subseries. You've got Corran Horn on one side, who absolutely follows that model. He is loyal to a fault. But then Aaron
Right.
Alston, he almost directly defies that with
Right.
his protagonist of Kel Tanner, that because he and Stackpole were friends. Like, they actually gave
Right.
writing seminars together. They taught people
Right.
how to write together. So it
Right.
almost
So
feels like Alston
that's an
intentionally is
interesting
like,
idea.
here's my
That's funny.
super lovable character who's not loyal. Literally,
Ha!
his main character trait is not loyal.
Poke an eye to you, Stackpole. Stack this, Stackpole.
Oh, goodness.
That's funny.
That was
That's funny.
bad.
That's. Where's our sound effect? No. That's a great point. That's fascinating. I guess I never really thought of it that way. I would say that outside of Alston's X-Wing books, the only Star Wars books that I would say that I read from the extended universe, may its memory always live on in our hearts, the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, and I think those are the only Star Wars books that I think might be better than the Wraithwing books. They cheat though, because they use all of the main characters from the Star Wars movies. And, the truth is the characterization is still not as good. I really think it's still not as good as Drake's Squadron. The only character that really carries those books is Thrawn himself. Thrawn is a fascinating character.
I disagree.
But you disagree that Thrawn is interesting?
I disagree that he stands out as the most interesting.
Who's the most interesting character in the Thrawn trilogy?
I would say Gilad Pelion or Talon Card.
Okay, Talon Card is interesting. Oh, and I forgot that Mara Jade was created in the Thrawn trilogy as well.
I mean, she's a great character. She's interesting. But I think if we're really talking about a character that you really want to sink your teeth into and get to know and
Right.
explore all of the aspects that make up their personality so you can understand them, I don't think Mara Jade really stands up to those other three.
See, and that's the thing. That's the thing, though. Alston has Face Loran. Face Loran was a actor whose movies or productions helped the Empire's cause. And he feels like so much more regretful and like that's such a meaningful event in his past. Whereas Mara Jade was like a personally trained assassin and bodyguard for the Emperor, and she's just not as interesting. And like, how can that be? It just shows you how good Alston is.
Yeah, true. Mara Jade is almost too... I think the core of it is humor. I think that's the core issue at play here. I think that you make a character too serious, and instead of becoming more interesting, they become less.
It's like the guiding principle of this podcast.
That is kind of what we were thinking, is that, we talk about things seriously, but they're not serious issues, and we joke.
Well, one of us will attempt, and the other will be successful.
But you agreed immediately on Talon Card, so I want to give a defense of Gilad Pelion.
Okay.
And it is, I suppose, a little difficult to extract the Zahn Pelion and examine him in isolation, because he does become such a major character later on. When they did scenes with Thrawn, Pelion was the character that we saw through. Yeah.
Right.
Saw Thrawn through his point of view, because we're not supposed to understand Thrawn. Thrawn has to be alien, so we need to see him through someone else's eyes.
Right. We don't even know. It's not even stated in the books what alien race Thrawn is. It's an interesting device. But yeah, go on.
Let's talk about the context, I guess, first, that these books came out in. These were the first Star Wars books. These were the first books of the expanded universe. People's idea of the Empire up until this point was a caricature of evil. It was Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, steepling their fingers and laughing maniacally in their Death Stars and their Star Destroyers named Executor. It's hilariously evil. Whereas Gilitalian was this very interesting choice
Yeah. Yeah.
of Zahn saying, okay, let's make our prominent imperial character a good man.
Right. That's true.
Let's
That's
take the
interesting.
caricature of evil and give us a reason to root for their success.
Right, right. That's a really, really great device. So basically, it was adding moral ambiguity into a universe that before that was very black and white.